Hello, I'm doing a quick, sudden vlog this evening. Got a drink. I needed a stiff drink, after that Boris Johnson speech, but I'm seeing some hilarious stuff on social media. So I'll have a drink and listen to this. This is on Twitter.
Indoors. If you can work from home, go to work. Don't go to work. Go outside. Don't go outside. And then we will or won't. Something. Go to work. Go to work. Don't take public transport. Go to work. Don't go to work. Stay indoors. If you can work from home, go to work. Don't go to work. Go outside. Don't go outside. And then we will or won't. Something. Go to work. Go to work. Don't take public transport. Go to work. Don't go to work. Stay indoors. If you can work from home, go to work. Don't go to work.
Shouldn't laugh really, but oh my goodness. Some of the responses on social media. For the past several hours, Boris's feud's been trending on Twitter. Boris Speech, Boris Johnson, everything. I keep putting up the latest on here. A long time after he made his speech, by the way. I've seen some pretty humorous comments. On Twitter. Good luck, England. Yeah, we're going to need it. The virus saved the billionaires. Go to work if you can't work from home, but avoid public transport if you can, and if you can't, then socially distance. If you can, but if you can't, then I'm sure you'll be fine. Just stay alert. This sums up everything. This sums everything up. So the general advice. So again, I've been looking on Twitter, but MSM as well. MSM as well. I've been checking the live feed on here. Tourism bosses, switching over to MSM for a moment. Tourism bosses in Cumbria said they are shocked by the timing and short notice of his announcement. Cumbria's tourism board tweeted, "We are awaiting further details, but the safety of residents must come first. For now, tourism businesses in Cumbria remain closed, and we urge everyone to continue to stay home." As part of the Prime Minister's plans to reopen society, he said from Wednesday, this coming Wednesday, which will be Wednesday the 13th of May 2020, people in England would now be able to leave home as many times as they wish for exercise and drive to other destinations in the country for exercise. Now, people have previously been warned to avoid travelling to beauty spots like the Lake District in Cumbria, as the county still had high infection rates. John Apter, the National Chair of the Police Federation in England and Wales, says the work of the police must be based on crystal clear guidance, not loose rules that are left open to interpretation. Apter calls on the government must provide clear and unambiguous messaging and guidance, adding that any lack of clarity will be grossly unfair on officers whose job is already challenging. He says the UK government's changes in England follow a week of mixed messages, and the release of some information which, fueled by media speculation, meant many people acted as though the lockdown had already ended. If the message of what is expected of the public is not clear, then it will make the job of policing this legislation almost impossible, he says. A business group has advised companies in London not to change their plans for Monday, despite the Prime Minister saying people who could not work from home should return to the workplace. Richard Burge, Chief Executive of the London Chamber of Commerce and Industry, said businesses should wait until the government has given them guidance on how they can prepare for ensuring their employees can commute safely to work and be kept safe in the workplace. This is the whole thing about all of this is it's so vague. Boris Johnson's speech, you know. So the people who can work should work, right? But then in the next sentence, you know, shops, etc., etc., are not going to be opening from, 1st of June at the earliest. And then there's the case of, we're talking about manufacturing, factories, and construction. So, does this take place from tomorrow? Or is it from Wednesday? If all of this is supposed to be happening tomorrow, then people have only been given hours' notice to get all the safety, social distancing measures in place at the workplace, like in the factories, for example. I've worked in a factory before. Keeping social distancing rules there is going to be a nightmare. You have one building and you have a lot of people crammed in there. It's an indoor environment, and studies have shown that this virus is far more likely to spread in an indoor environment rather than an outdoor environment. Continuing on, scrolling down through the timeline. Go back to work if you cannot work from home, says the PM, and do as much exercise as you like indoors. So it's mixed messages though. The retail, the high street shops, etc., etc., aren't allowed to open until 1st of June at the earliest. The date today is the 10th of May. It's not even the middle of May yet. It's mixed messages. And I thought Boris Johnson was going to be presenting a timeline on Sunday evening with his speech. I was expecting that timeline to be mentioning dates. If you wanted people to go back to work, you needed to be crystal clear what industries, where, who, what, when. You had to be crystal clear. But this is all vague and open to interpretation. But how easy will it be to persuade people to leave their homes now that the advice in England has changed? For weeks, people have been told to stay at home to protect the NHS and save lives. They have got used to the idea that leaving their home puts themselves and others at risk of infection. Now the slogan has changed to stay alert, whatever that means. Psychologists say it's a woolly message which won't help anxious individuals feel reassured by the next steps. It's possible that many will find it hard to return to work in travel distances unless they are told how safe it's going to be. The coming weeks will confirm just how successful this latest guidance has been. And then we get to the situation in June. Now, this is important. If you want an idea of what's going to be happening in the UK over the next 2 to 3 weeks, look at Germany. Because Germany lifted restrictions a while back. Started to lift restrictions, that is. The latest figures appear to show that the number of COVID-19 infections in Germany may be rising faster again. The reproduction rate, bear in mind this is mainstream media here, the reproduction rate has risen to 1.1, meaning 10 people will infect 11 others on average. To keep the pandemic in check, this level should be below 1.0. This is an estimate, and officials warn against reading too much into short-term changes. But this all comes as Germany is easing restrictions in some of the most risky sectors, such as restaurants, hotels, football. So the government will be watching closely, and if the virus is spreading more rapidly, some restrictions could be reimposed. That's what Boris Johnson's going to do here. Some people will go back to work in the factories and in construction, etc., and then in a couple of weeks' time, the number of COVID-19 infections is rising again. Boris Johnson is then like, put the brakes on, right? We're going back into lockdown. It's not safe yet. That's what I predict is going to happen. So the government will be watching closely, and if the virus is spreading more rapidly, some restrictions could be reimposed. At the same time, the daily death toll in Germany is the lowest it's been in more than a month. Leading UK trade union cautious about return to work. The General Secretary of a leading union is calling on the government not to cut corners or play fast and loose with employee safety as people are encouraged to go back to work. Speaking after the PM's speech, the General Secretary of Unition, David Prentice, warns if safety isn't paramount, then infections will increase and there'll be a second wave that risks overwhelming the NHS and social care. Yeah, that second wave will result in Boris Johnson imposing the lockdown again. Labour leader raises questions. Scotland's First Minister Nicola Sturgeon says there's still room for simpler, clearer messages on how to tackle the virus. Speaking about Boris Johnson's speech, she tells the BBC she's particularly concerned that moving from the stay-at-home message to something much vaguer means the public weren't given clear messages about what they should and shouldn't do. She says it is incumbent on the PM to make clear more strongly than he did tonight that he was talking about lifting restrictions for England and not other parts of the UK. We really, all of us, have such a duty right now to be as clear as possible, adds Sturgeon. Well, I don't often agree with a lot of what Sturgeon says, but to be as clear as possible, yes, I would agree with that. So here's what we've gleaned from a government official. Most secondary school pupils in England won't be back in a classroom until September. It is hoped those with exams next year might get to head back before the summer holidays, but there are no specifics on the timing of that. Oh my god, summer holidays? Wait. School's been out for ages anyway. 2020, the year that hardly any school took place whatsoever, I guess. Nurseries and primary schools will not reopen until the beginning of next month, at the earliest. As and when they do, those in reception year 1 and year 6 will head back first. From Wednesday in England, there will be no limit on the exercise you go outside to do, as if people have been paying attention to any of that anyway. You haven't got a policeman standing outside your door like saying, oh yes, Mr. Policeman, I'm going out for my daily dose of exercise today. And then you come back from your daily dose of exercise, the policeman's got to stay outside your front door all day, right? And then, he's there with a little notebook or something, making sure you don't go out again that same day to get another dose of exercise. It's unpoliceable. Now you're going to be allowed to sit in the park and read, and you're allowed to sunbathe. Rejoice! Crack open the champagne bottle. Bloody hell. We're allowed to sit in the park and read, and we can sunbathe again. Really? What's happened here? It's skipped. You can meet one person from outside your own household if you stay 2 meters apart from each other. Again, how are they going to police that? So you can sit next to a single friend in the park, but you must socially distance. Yeah, this is great. I've already witnessed this, by the way, out and about. I was walking across a bridge one day, and so there was a couple of people. They wanted to have a conversation with each other, but they wanted to socially distance as well. So at the moment, the social distance advice is you've got to be 2 meters apart. And 2 meters equates to over 6 feet. Okay, it's quite a distance. So you've got people trying to stay 2 meters apart from each other, and they're trying to have a conversation. So they're kind of yelling. You raise your voice a little bit to be heard because there's quite a distance involved. You know, it'll be even worse if you're wearing face masks, of course, because if you're wearing a face mask, the sound of your voice gets muffled, and it's even more difficult to understand what somebody's saying, and they're standing over 6 feet away from you. And you can drive to parks and beaches in England, but you must socially distance when you get there. For those who are shielding, there is no change in the advice. Welsh advice not changed. Then you've got analysis going on here. Baby steps for business. The standout line from the PM is people who can't work from home should be actively encouraged to go to work. But then, you know, he adds on caveats beyond that, like, but don't use public transport. Wow. If you're talking about factory workers and things, an awful lot of those people did use public transport to get to work. The truth is that many businesses have already been having people return to work in a safe way, but the real problem is people are being advised to avoid public transport if at all possible, which begs the question, if you rely on public transport, and many do, to get to work, what message is this sending? At the end of the day, this is about confidence. Confidence on the part of employers that they're not going to run foul of government guidelines. Confidence on the part of workers that they feel safe, and ultimately confidence on the part of consumers that they can venture out to buy the products. But these are really baby steps. The leader of the Labour Party PM statement lacks clarity and consensus. The London Mayor has said Londoners should stay at home as much as possible. Urge them to continue to avoid public transport and work remotely if they can. On and on it goes. Go back to Twitter. Oh, hang on a minute. Take a look on here. That was the most confusing bit of television since the ending of Lost. I was thinking, okay, first and foremost, I've got to be honest here, I did not listen to Boris Johnson's speech earlier this evening. I can't listen to it. He stumbles, he fumbles, So I decided, I didn't listen to his actual speech, you know, I waited until afterwards, get the summary, get the bullet points of what he said, and then look at the reaction online. So that's what I did. My thoughts earlier on was, having not listened to his speech, but just from the reaction to it, contemplating the summary, the bullet points from his speech, I would say I think I probably got more clarity from my maths teacher when I went to school, when the maths teacher was trying to drum subjects like the matrices into us. Just not enough clarity, not enough detail. Apparently, Boris Johnson's going to be answering questions from the public tomorrow regarding the situation. That'll be interesting because the speech that Boris Johnson did tonight was a pre-recorded speech, so he actually had time to sit and prepare that speech, believe it or not. Right. What I will be interested to see will be a live Q&A session with Boris Johnson, taking questions directly from the general public, where he hasn't got time to prepare his answers. Right. I would love to see how a Q&A session like that would go. Never seen this many worldwide trends about the UK Prime Minister. I like this one not on the list, COVID-19 UK. Boris has failed and Boris Speech, Boris Johnson. Probably going to have to spend some time going over the thread. Actually, Drake is #1 trending now, hip hop and rap, something different. Boris Speech is currently #2, politics trending. Feel a bit like the way I did after watching The Last Jedi. Horribly predictable that a Tory government would urge people to see their boss first rather than their family and loved ones. I think it's finally sinking in, the UK government. Oh gosh, we're gonna do something to at least try to start to get the economy going again. So, the Chancellor's already said that, the furlough scheme is unsustainable, where people are getting paid 80% of their wages to just stay at home every day. So I think there's a certain amount of there's pressure involved here. We've got to get people back to work gradually. So manufacturing and construction first. And, other things may follow along later. By the way, I saw a tweet from Jeremy Corbyn earlier. See if I can find it. Not that long ago. Here it is. Jeremy Corbyn tweeted this earlier today. There should be no return to work until it is safe to do so. If work cannot be done safely, it should not proceed. People must come before private profit. So, if you imagine for a second that Jeremy Corbyn won the general election back in last December 2019, would he have been any different? No, he wouldn't. No different to Boris Johnson whatsoever, really. So let's get the latest. Total gibberish. I love this one earlier. There's an account on here called Parody Matt Hancock. I really like this one. Parody Matt Hancock. Yeah, not the real guy. There's the roadmap. Bring on the clowns. So, no, I can't repeat that one there. It's got strong language. Strong language. Johnson is the one on the right just when you thought it was safe to go. I remember that movie. Yeah, that's Jaws, isn't it? Jaws. So I'm here this evening. I've had a drink or two. After Boris's speech this evening, you need a drink. I was hoping that after a couple glasses of brandy, it might help me to understand his speech a little bit better, you know. There's lack of clarity here. I mean, going back to last Thursday in the UK, last Thursday there was supposed to be the 3-week review regarding the lockdown restrictions, and they didn't seem to be prepared to say, you know, anything been lifted yet or not? No. Okay, the lockdown applies for another 3 weeks, yes or no. No clarity, didn't say yes or no. Or let's wait until Sunday evening when Boris makes his speech. So Sunday evening comes along, Boris makes his speech. Now people are more confused than ever about what's going on. So some of the lockdown restrictions going to be lifted. Okay, people need to know exactly when. Give us a date. Give us a precise date. Certain restrictions are going to be lifted. Where? What sector? What industry? You know, conciseness is needed. It has been a shambles from the start. We are the laughing stock of the world. Yeah. I saw, so during the course of the evening, I saw some pretty amusing responses on social media. Are real, so good though.
So we are saying, don't go to work, go to work. Don't take public transport, go to work, don't go to work. Stay indoors. If you can work from home, go to work. Don't go to work. Go outside, don't go outside. And then we will or won't, something or other. So we are saying, don't go to work, go to work. Don't
So
take
good.
public transport, go.
So that deserves a lot more likes and retweets, by the way, that video there. So good. Does this mean hairdressers and nail bars will be open tomorrow asking for a friend? No, I don't think so. Because hairdressers and nail bars don't come under the label of construction or manufacturing, does it? So, construction, manufacturing, yes. No, you're not going to be able to get a haircut yet, and you're not going to get that dentist appointment yet. People will be showing up for work looking like Captain Caveman. For the ones who do return to work, that is. And to think that this guy thought he was the reincarnation of Winston Churchill. After that speech tonight, no, sorry, Boris. You're not even fit to polish his shoes. This was pre-recorded. It's such a monumental failure, especially considering that it was a pre-recorded speech as well. I've never been so proud to be Welsh. Germany is having a second wave, as they've just announced. They lifted restrictions too early. Yeah, probably. If that's the case, then the same will happen here too. So I thought I would fire up the old, kind of a vlog tonight. The Boris Johnson speech night. It was pretty hyped up, during the day. During the day on Sunday, Boris' speech was hyped up. People spent the whole day on social media arguing about, what the latest, or the slogan is going to change in England only. Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland are keeping the stay-at-home message, but England, Boris Johnson, the slogan is changing to, it's not stay-at-home anymore, it's be alert. So people spent a large part of Sunday arguing about slogans. Yeah, but from my point of view, we don't need slogans. We need clarity. Stop the world, I want to get off. We're well and truly screwed. What a bozo. Granted, it's a pretty difficult situation to deal with. I would not want to be a Prime Minister or President of any country at this time. Yes, it's a difficult situation to deal with. But I think the UK can do better than this. Slogans and what have you, It's Boris Johnson trying to be too close to Trump, in my opinion, The slogans come out, make America great again and drain the swamp. Should have stayed in the fridge, Boris. You're talking nonsense. That entire speech was just waffle. Clearly no plan, just words. So I got to agree, really. I was expecting a plan, a timeline this evening. If people are going to be giving a timeline, how we're going to get out of this. To be fair, there was a hint of some dates there, like the hospitality industry, maybe June, maybe July. But it'll be dependent on the science and whether the virus makes a second comeback or not. Well, so there you have it. Let's take a look at Boris Speech latest. Refresh. So you can meet one family member outside and keep 2 meters apart. Remember, 2 meters is actually over 6 feet. And people in the UK are used to dealing with feet rather than meters. When you say 2 meters, it doesn't sound like very much. Okay, but in the currency that the UK understands, 2 meters is over 6 feet apart. Do you know how far that is? And I'm speaking from the perspective, I'm in a small town. Many of the shops around here are very small sized. If those shops reopen but social distance, and you still got to keep people 2 meters apart, those shops can only let 1 or 2 customers in at a time, and everyone else has got to queue up outside. Think of small shops. So, start wrapping things up here. What's the stuff I looked at earlier? Oh yes. Oh, there was a Guardian article. Boris Johnson urged the country to take its first tentative steps out of lockdown this week. In an address to the nation, it was immediately condemned as being divisive, confusing and vague. In a speech from Downing Street, Johnson said if the circumstances were right, schools in England and some shops might be able to open next month, and the government was actively encouraging people to return to work if they cannot do so from home. But he stressed that this was not the time simply to end the lockdown, and that he intended to take a cautious approach guided by the science, otherwise a second deadly wave of the devilish virus would take hold. But his remarks drew criticism and concern from across the political spectrum, and his decision to drop the stay-at-home message in favour of advice to stay alert was met with a chorus of disapproval from the leaders of Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales, because Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales are keeping with the stay-at-home message, and they are extending their lockdowns, for the most part. Though he gave no details, Johnson explained his blueprint for a gradual easing of the lockdown in England could see primary schools, shops and nurseries partially reopening from the 1st of June, while some cafes or restaurants with outdoor space plus places of worship and socially distanced cinemas could return to business from July. He also said more outdoor activity will be allowed in England from this Wednesday, including unlimited exercise, trips to beauty spots such as beaches and national parks, and sports such as angling, golf and tennis, as long as they are kept to household groups. So, I'm thinking about that video game Golf with Your Friends. It's kind of going to be, this is going to be golf, but only in your household group at the moment, right? You can do angling, golf, and tennis, but only within your own family group. People will also be allowed to meet one other member of another household at a time outdoors, either while exercising or sitting down, according to government sources. I'm not sure how that's going to get policed there. Johnson said he would only start reopening the economy if the pandemic is clearly under control, but his call for people to get back to their workplaces led to immediate condemnation from trade unions worried about the safety of their work. Leader of the Labour Party said the Prime Minister appears to be effectively telling millions of people to go back to work tomorrow without the necessary guidance. But we haven't got the guidelines and we don't know how it's going to work with public transport. So there's a huge number of questions arising out of this. Workers were urged not to use public transport where possible, but cars, walking or bikes instead. Key dates in the plan to end lockdown here: May 13th. People encouraged to take more and even unlimited amounts of outdoor exercise. Oh yes! You can go outside and you can jog indefinitely if you want to. Great. You can go for miles and miles and miles. You're no longer limited to, just the area like within a mile of where you live or whatever. June 1st is another highlighted date here. May be in a position to begin the phased reopening of shops and to get primary pupils back into schools in stages. July 1st, at the earliest, hope to reopen at least some of the hospitality industry and other public places. The Prime Minister's decision to loosen the lockdown also led to a breakdown in the UK's four-nation approach to dealing with coronavirus, with the leaders of Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland refusing to replace the stay-home messaging with Johnson's new Stay Alert slogan. Nicola Sturgeon, the First Minister of Scotland, said dropping the stay-home message could have catastrophic consequences north of the border and ordered Scots to follow different advice on outdoors exercise. This will be unlimited, but there must be no sunbathing. So, hey, you folks in Scotland, no sunbathing, picnics or barbecues, she said, in contrast to Johnson's new advice. She said the new Stay Alert message was too vague and imprecise to be used. Mark Drakeford, First Minister of Wales, emphasised that the country's stay-at-home advice has not changed. He announced on Friday that Wales will allow more frequent exercise and the opening of garden centres, but said schools will not reopen from the 1st of June. Johnson will set out further details of his approach to Parliament on Monday, publishing a document that will set out a roadmap for reopening the economy. This is likely to include ambitions for shops, primary schools to return from the 1st of June, starting with reception year 1 and year 6. It is understood he would also want nurseries and other early years providers to return at the earliest opportunity. Secondary school pupils sitting exams next year would be given an opportunity to see their teachers before the end of term, but there are no plans for other secondary pupils to return to school before the next school year. In other words, September. In other words, some of the hospitality industry and other public places, provided they are safe and enforce social distancing. He was not specific about which hospitality venues could reopen, but it is understood that it means a return for cafes and restaurants with outdoor space that can enforce social distancing, rather than pubs, even ones with beer gardens. Goodness knows when the pubs are going to be allowed to fully reopen them. And it's a big thing in the UK. 10th of May right now, so summer's about to start shortly. Summer 2020 in England without the pubs open is basically what we're looking at here. People in England will be allowed to sit in the parks within their household groups, to drive to beauty spots for walks and take unlimited amounts of outdoor exercise. People will be able to meet and sit down with a single other person outdoors as long as they stay 2 meters apart. Angling, swimming in lakes or rivers, tennis and golf will all be allowed if people are sticking to their household groups. The speech omitted guidance on the wearing of face masks, but this is likely to be included in Monday's document, advising non-medical masks in enclosed public places such as public transport. It also had no detail on when people may be able to meet with friends and family in groups again, which I think is going to be a very big point for a lot of people. Stressing that the UK would take a careful approach, he said these were the first of slow and gradual changes, but people would face higher fines for breaking the rules, and the government could reimpose stricter rules if the virus starts to spread uncontrollably again. Fines could start at £100 and double for further offences up to a maximum of £3,200. If there are outbreaks, if there are problems, we will not hesitate to put on the brakes, he said. Another tightening of the rules will involve quarantining people coming to the UK from abroad for 14 days, although this might only apply to travel by plane. Excuse me, but a lot of people are going to have big issues with that. First and foremost, as Trump has said before, the virus could have been stopped at the source. Right. Quarantining people coming from the UK from abroad. Why was that not put in place from the moment this virus started to spread around the world? Far too late to be doing it now. And only applying to people travelling by plane. Okay. Boats and trains. We got in the UK. We got the Channel Tunnel now. We are connected, but rail network is connected to Europe via the rail network. To prevent reinfection from abroad, I am serving notice that it will soon be the time, with the transmission significantly lower, to impose quarantine on people coming into this country by air. Only air, Johnson said. Number 10 also suggested there may be no quarantine for people travelling from France after a phone call with French President Macron. No quarantine measures would apply to travellers coming from France at this stage. Any measures on either side would be taken in a concerted and reciprocal manner, a spokesman said. Europe's lockdown eases. What changes on the 11th of May? There's a diagram here. Europe, we're talking Europe here. Austria, shops and hairdressers are already open. Why not here? Restaurants allowed to open under certain conditions from the 11th of May. Belgium. Shops that sell certain fabrics already open. Other shops can open from the 11th of May, which is tomorrow, by the way, with strict hygiene rules in place. Czech Republic. Small shops already open from the 11th of May. Shopping centres and larger shops can open along with outdoor restaurants, pubs, hairdressers and museums. Cultural and sporting events with up to 100 people can go ahead. Not really going for it in the Czech Republic then, eh? Bottoms up. France. Progressive lockdown exit starts on the 11th of May with country divided into red and green zones depending on infection levels. Nurseries and primary schools and most businesses can open on the 11th of May, but not cafes and restaurants. No new measures expected in the UK and Ireland on the 11th of May, which is tomorrow, Monday. Germany. Shops, playgrounds, museums and churches already open, as are schools for older children. Bundesliga matches resume on the 15th of May. Hotels and restaurants can reopen in principle from the 9th of May, but decision left to states. Greece. Smaller shops and businesses already open. All retail stores allowed to reopen from the 11th of May when senior high school classes resume. Italy. Parks, factories and building sites already open, as are bars and restaurants for takeaway service. No new measures expected until the 18th of May. Netherlands. Nurseries, primary schools and hairdressers to reopen on the 11th of May, plus cinemas, restaurants and cafes under certain conditions. Non-contact outdoor sports permitted. Portugal. Small shops, hairdressers and car dealerships already open. No new measures expected until the 18th of May. Spain. Restaurant takeaway services, hairdressers and some other businesses already open. From the 11th of May in less affected regions only. Bar terraces can reopen at a third of capacity. Hotels and tourist accommodation can reopen with the exception of communal areas. Healthy people can socialise in small groups and families can attend funerals. Switzerland. Food shops, garden centres and hairdressers already open. Schools and shops selling items other than food can open from the 11th of May. That information comes from the Johns Hopkins University, by the way. Johnson's move towards the stay alert message signals the government's intention to try to get people back to work rather than staying at home in all circumstances. But trade unions have not agreed new workplace guidance, and Unition General Secretary Dave Prentice said the return to work must be safe. There must be no cutting corners, no playing fast and loose with employee safety. The economy is important, but lives are too. Len McCluskey, the General Secretary of Unite, also raised concerns about people heading back to work before mandatory safety rules are agreed. This has not been thought through, and a failure to do so places working people in danger. Johnson explained the government would adopt a new 5-level threat system to describe the risk the UK faces from coronavirus, saying the UK was currently still at the second most serious level of 4. The COVID alert system run by a new joint biosecurity centre. He added, "We have a route and we have a plan, and everyone in government has the all-consuming pressure and challenge to save lives, restore livelihoods and gradually restore the freedoms that we need." Alright, so there was a Guardian article I just read out. The real announcement today from Boris Johnson was that he brushed his hair. Got one from David Icke here. Police hit hours. Hundreds enjoy pizzas, beers and wine in park. Wow, that's worse than murder. Hang them, I say. So long as the gallows are 6 feet apart. Boris Speech, Joff Audi here. Send the poor back to work with 12 hours notice and see how many of them catch COVID. There's some truth in that. Because using a certain segment of the population as human guinea pigs. You want to test if the virus is still sort of active out in the general community. Okay, the virus may still be spreading in hospitals and care homes, but you want to find out, is the virus still active in the general community? So we'll send some people back to work and we'll wait and see what happens, right? I quite like that one as well, from Carl Loban. Stay home but go out if you want. Work from home but return to work if you're broke. Cycle or walk to work unless you can't. Reopen shops and schools in June unless we can't. Reopen hospitality except most places won't be viable. Quarantine arrivals 3 months too late. I'm going to end this vlog here because I'm closing in on the hour. Wow, I've been harping on an hour. Thanks for watching. See you next time, and I may as well close with how I started. See you next time.
Go to work. Don't take public transport. Go to work. Don't go to work. Stay indoors. If you can work from home, go to work. Don't go to work. Go outside. Don't go outside. And then we will or won't. Something. Go to work. Go to work. Don't take public transport. Go to work. Don't go to work. Stay indoors. If you can work from home, go to work. Don't go to work. Go outside. Don't go outside. And then we will or won't. Something. Go to work. Go